Hello and welcome to the DMBA podcast where we share business confidence with the design community. Today with me are Franz and Tom. Hey Franz, hey Tom.
Hey. Hey, Alen. Hey, Franz.
Hey.
Hey, hey.
So, today we're gonna do a second business design teardown. We did the first one a couple of weeks back and you really liked it. It seemed to struck a chord with a lot of you, so we decided to do another one, and we chose another company that's kind of a darling of the design community, and we'll maybe tear it down or maybe we'll fall in love. Let's see. But Tom, so what is the company we will cover today?
Well, I guess appropriate to have a drum roll because this is an audio-based company that we're going to be tearing down today, which is premium Wi-Fi connected speaker designer manufacturer Sonos. Which, go on, Alan, you were going to say something there.
No, I just wanted to show.
So
this is it. Yeah.
Is this the S1?
SL1 SL. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, I did ask Alan, was this a research purchase? He reassures me he'd had this for months. Not sure I believe
Years.
Yeah,
you still have the box?
It's just a box. He's just got a box for an S1. He hasn't actually got a speaker.
I just bought a box to make it look like it's... No, it's here. Actually, it's a funny story why it's here, why it's not being used. It's in the box.
It's funny story is it arrived yesterday.
No, I had it for a few years, but in this room, we will move shortly. So I just started to pack a few things, and it didn't in this room where I'm now right now. The Wi-Fi is not the best, or like my computer keeps switching to Wi-Fi. So long story short, I'm not using it at the moment, but it's a nice product.
Cool. We could have done a live unboxing. That goes well on YouTube. But yeah, Sonos. So a bit like the Lululemon episode last episode even, a premium product, right? There's no denying. And I think that will become a bit of a pattern with these teardowns as far as designers loving a product or loving a brand. A lot of them tend to fit into the premium space. We'll try and move away from that occasionally, but can't be denied these are expensive speakers. They really index high on kind of design, usability, the experience of unboxing and using it. And we're going to get into that big time. But Sonos have been around for a while, founded in 2002. I've got some notes here about them in Santa Barbara, California. Bunch of people who had already worked in tech hardware. So it was John McFarlane, Craig Shelbourne, Tom Cullen and Trim May. They were all tech veterans, but they kind of took those efforts, that work they'd already done in hardware, and really saw that music being online was just an unstoppable force, and that the current hardware wasn't really set up to give the most seamless experience when you're getting a great experience of streaming. The hardware wasn't going to live up to expectations. So ahead of the game on that stuff, and wanted to just make it very easy to enjoy this new way of experiencing that content. So their first product, which I don't remember, Sonos only came onto my radar probably about 10 years ago, something called the ZP100 amplifier, also known as the Connect amp. I don't know if either of you are familiar with this. I've looked it up.
Yeah.
It looks okay. It's certainly not the same design language that they have now. But that wasn't released until 2005, and that was an amplifier that you could connect to the internet. And a lot of their early devices you could kind of connect your existing hardware to, which is really interesting. It's not something that's really a factor now. But, if you had really decent hi-fi equipment, getting streamed music into that was a pain in the bum. So this allowed you to kind of make that a bit easier, but connect existing stuff. Some people still run some of these amps with their like high-end stuff, even years on. Obviously, since then, they've moved more into the kind of standalone speaker market. That is what they offer now. So not so much connecting other people's stuff, or not at all, but buying a all-in-one speaker or set of speakers that just gives you this absolutely incredible audio experience with none of the faff. you know, I'm someone who in the past has been really into like hi-fi separates. Was a bit of an audiophile earlier in my life. I blame my parents for that. And you know, this stuff took up half of my like room when I was growing up, and it was
So you had one of these big stereos?
yeah, all the Technic stuff and like big speakers on stands, and I was like a bit of a geek for it, a bit of a snob for it. And then as I moved out like later life, I didn't have the space for this stuff, so I ended up like giving it to my brother, and but then did want to get back into audio. So that's how I kind of learned about Sonos. I was like, I want really good quality audio, but I don't want the footprint, and we'll get into that when it comes to the design stuff. So they've really carved out that niche of being a player who does these quite compact all-in-one speakers. There are a lot of those in the market, but they are playing in that kind of premium tier that a lot of the competition aren't, and we'll talk about that a little later. They went public in 2018, IPO'd in 2018, which I'm sure Alen will touch on a little bit later. But yeah, I think the thing with these are long-lasting premium products, easy to use, robust, and I think that's what we kind of love about them. The setup process is so slick, the app is great, not loads of wires to faff around with, connects to all the streaming services, it's not locked down into particular ones. So yeah, what were your, I've got a couple of facts I'm going to come back to, but yeah, what were your first experiences of Sonos? Have either of you got products already? Obviously, no, Alan's got one.
Just received it, right? Actually, I think I learned about Sonos around 2000 and let's say around 10-ish. Because at that point, when I visited their website, there was this amplifier was their main product. And I had basically 0 speakers in my home. I was still living with my parents. I just had my computer and that was my speaker. Or probably I even had those, you remember those like outside speakers you would have connected to your desktop computer? So I was looking at this amplifier and I was just in love with the idea of like using it in different rooms and stuff, but I didn't need it. So I remember it from back then. And then when I moved to Berlin, I inherited it. So when I moved into an apartment, it was part of the, you know, like a package of the bought furniture. Because when people live out, they sometimes force you to basically buy all the furniture. And I was forced into buying a Sonos Playbar, I believe it's the name. Forced, but I was happy to do it. And it's been one of the best experiences in terms of the audio, because I really love listening to audio in the background, especially like in the living room. And it was just a very seamless experience. And that kind of forced me into buying streaming service as well. You know, that not forced me, but I for the first time, it made a lot of sense. And that was back in 2015, 16. And it just made a lot of sense to buy a streaming service and be subscribed to it, because then you could really unlock the power of Sonos. Because otherwise, just listening to like internet radios and stuff, that doesn't really bring that much value. Yeah, so from there, then I started also thinking about buying, you know, this, because it's modular. Then I said, okay, I'm going to also buy the One. So this is Sonos One, like a standalone small speaker. And that's the one we have for, well, my office at the moment, and also when we travel. So if we go for a couple of weeks to the seaside and so on, we have this instead of those like Bluetooth speakers. So yeah, I relatively big fan, enjoy the products. There are some tech issues, especially if you have a couple of Wi-Fi's within the apartment because of the space. That becomes a hassle. But apart from that, yeah, I'm a fan. Nice. Let's leave it at that.
Same. I'll let Franz. Are you on board yet? Are you a Sonos owner?
I've never owned a Sonos myself, so I have a regular Bluetooth speaker. But I remember when we moved offices with my company, must have been like 2016. I was actually setting up our Sonos in the new office. And that was crazy. Do you remember this True Play feature where you move around the flat and then it uses the microphone of the of your phone?
Yeah.
to basically measure where you are and how the echo and audio quality of your room are, and it adjusts the whole system. Like, it's so smooth, and at the same time it makes you feel like you are an audio technician. Like that's a crazy combination. Like, it seems like you're doing something super complicated, but it's actually super easy, and that's what actually stuck with me since then, which must have been like, I don't know, 7
Yeah, 2015 they launched it. You've already done one of my quiz questions, so 1 point to Franz. 2015, yeah, the TruePlay thing, which I got to be honest, like very, very clever, but I had a nightmare setting up my second speaker where it just kept on not getting on with that part of the process. And I was, if someone had been filming me walking around my kitchen like a lunatic with this phone kind of, so for people who aren't familiar, you basically, it only works on Apple devices, and you basically have to, when you're setting up the Sonos, you take your iPad or your iPhone and you move around the space that you're in, and it plays this like weird sound. I don't think it needs the sound, but it does it as part of the effect, and basically kind of maps out wherever the speaker is to give you the best acoustics. And you're right, you feel like you're somehow involved, a little bit like the IKEA effect, maybe that might be a stretch of like you're involved in the setup, and that's kind of neat. But yeah, very clever bit of technology. And if you've ever listened to your Sonos with or without doing that, you really notice the difference. Like, that is a killer feature, I think, that you just, I don't know how much it's done in hi-fi land, but yeah, the first time I discovered Sonos was co-working space. So not the one that I'm in, got my office in now, but another one that had them. And the people who worked there were just like constantly playing around with a shared playlist, and the sound was sick. And I was like, checked out that they were Sonos. So I've got the one that's called the Beam, which is like the sound bar of your TV, because my TV is old and like the sound is woeful. And it's incredible. Like, I use that all the time for music and great for film. And then I've got one in the kitchen, because I can't do the washing up or cleaning without some tunes on. So that was where the second one had to go. So interesting. Yeah, so we've all experienced it in a few ways. Franz needs to pull the trigger on on a Beam or something.
So Franz, no Lululemon, no Sonos. Like, you're the outsider.
I'm the anti-consumerist.
I love it. At least one of us hasn't, been drinking the Kool-Aid with all these brands. Like, Franz he's the real one amongst us.
He's the objective.
Yeah. So got a couple of quick facts, which be interesting to get your thoughts on before we move into the sort of brand and business strategy piece with Franz. One of these I wasn't surprised with, one of them I really was, which is the average active product life of a Sonos speaker. Do you want to hazard a guess? How many years is it in active use, the average product, when someone buys it?
Because it gets broken, or just because
they might give up on it, or it breaks, or they stop using it for any reason. It might actually still work, but someone stops using it.
Should we both guess, or just one?
Yeah, both of you can guess.
I'm gonna go with my magic number, 7 years.
Franz?
3.
Interesting. It is 7 years. Well done, Alen.
Yes.
This is the quiz before the quiz. But that apparently is higher than any competitors in the space.
That is really long.
Yeah. I think I'm getting on for like 3 or 4 years with my Beam, but I can quite believe it. I've seen them in these co-working spaces for like what feels like nearly 10 years or so, and still working.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the reason I said 7 is because I see so many old ones. Like, it's not uncommon to see a really old-looking Sonos in a co-working space or in a shop even, or even in someone's home, and it still looks good. It still looks sleek and still works well. Which is not the case with other, Bose and stuff. You always have this feeling of upgrading.
And I think that is critical to the business strategy, which I'm sure Franz will touch on in a bit. The other fact, how many speakers does the average Sonos customer have in their home? This blew my mind.
I think both of us had found this in the research.
Hopefully we got the same number. Go on, Alen.
I actually didn't see the exact numbers, so this is going to be a guess, but I saw that roughly 60% of Sonos users have more than one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go with 3.2.
Franz?
3 again.
3 is 3. 3 products.
Ooh.
I mean, that's
crazy.
crazy. That is crazy. And repurchase has been like such a powerful flywheel for them, right?
Yeah.
And that's just incredible. You know, then I'm sure there are many people just outside of that average who have double figures and will keep advocating for it. I could quite easily see myself getting a couple more over the following years. But yeah, what a business if you have got that kind of loyalty and that kind of repurchasing at such a premium price.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it for our intro and a couple of facts, and I'm sure Franz is going to kind of dive deeper into some of the reasons that they're able to do that.
The nice thing is that, again, you have already brought up some of the decisive factors, or let's say factors that do put Sonos in a very unique position. So that's again the strategy game, right? So we know
But
what we're talking about. Sorry.
Before you go there, I have one more fun fact.
Okay.
Good.
So their brand name, right? Sonos. Did you notice that it's palindrome?
Can turn
So
it
if
round,
you read
right?
it, if you read it from the front or the back, it's the same. It's like, I don't know, noon or merem or kayak. So Sonos is a palindrome, and it's a cool story, I think, for a company that deals with sound to have a brand name that also has a nice sound design to it. So I think it's also a very functional idea, because let me show you, if basically you don't know how to place your speaker, it reads the same from this side, or if you just turn it around, it still reads the same. It's Sonos. Maybe my camera is inverted, but basically that's a really cool, I think, nice touch. It's a really cool touch. And I dug a little bit deeper to see, is there some kind of meaning to the name? And like, what does Sonos mean? And company didn't come up with an official explanation, but among the fans on Reddit,
Of course.
I found
Of course, there's a full-blown discussion around this.
of course, the theory that has the most proponents is the fact that Sonos means basically sound operating system. So the first three words, SON, is kind of the sound, and then OS, and the end is operating system. So it's the sound operating system. So I would subscribe to this theory. It sounds pretty nice, and it really
neat.
it puts like a nice branding story around this whole thing. Because I think the first name the company has for the first few years was really boring. It was, I think, named by a certain beach close to their office. But the Sonos is really like, it's global, it's easy to pronounce, it's easy to write, it's palindrome. And also the way they designed the logo, it's really smart. It works however you turn your speaker around.
It does. Just one last thing on that actually was, I remember when I first saw the brand, this is a bit of a confession from my brand naivety when I first discovered them. I thought it had something to do with Sony. Because it's sort of, the typeface was similar, and Sonos, I was like, oh, that's interesting, it's like a sub-brand. Obviously I realise now it's completely wrong, but actually the design language was kind of similar as well. So yeah, obviously I realise now, competing but not the same. But yeah, and they've had a few little tweaks to the brand over the years, but they haven't had to do much with it. It still looks really classy and premium.
Yeah, especially with new colors and stuff. It's really interesting.
Franz.
Yeah, sorry for jumping in, Franz. Now take it over.
You ready for strategy talk?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So we all know the basics, right? We know that Sonos is targeting music enthusiasts, tech enthusiasts, and being placed in this more premium group of companies and products. They focus on high quality engineering, perfect audio quality, and this great user experience of starting with the boxing, the setup, and then the usage during the 7 years, what we have now learned. Well, now we're getting to what has Sonos done to make them different from others, which is what strategy is about, right? And we're going to do it's not a guessing game, just a synthesizing game. So no, I'm going to give you the first one, but you then contribute to the other ones because most of them have already been mentioned.
Okay.
So the first one wasn't really mentioned. It was, but I think it still needs to be established as the base because what Sonos did as the first company ever was not to do wireless speakers, but to do multi-room audio. So that was really the first thing that Sonos started, being able to play the same music in different rooms or different music in different rooms, still working on the exact same system and making huge effort in making this perfect from a technical perspective, right? So perfecting the synchronization, the reliability, the ease of use, the setup, and this being completely different from having perfect standalone speakers, right? Just controlling your system in one place or in one room, but realizing music is actually like in a mall. It should also be in your home, that you have an experience throughout rooms, throughout your home. So that was basically Sonos pioneering this. Yeah, that's point number one. Now, I give you the name. I have, again, a little name game for you. And you give me what I mean. So I call this move the early adoption move.
So what is the game now? So you give us a name and then we should guess what exactly?
The strategic activity or the strategic move that that is actually behind that. So the early adopter move. So explaining this, how did they make it possible to win over these music enthusiasts in the very beginning to try out Sonos ecosystem?
Good one. So the first one is called early adopter move.
Yeah, and Tom mentioned it actually.
Could it be the fact it was you could connect existing hardware, but get that same effect?
Exactly. So imagine you are a music enthusiast. You're not starting out as a music enthusiast. You are a music enthusiast and you have awesome speakers or an awesome deck. And now somebody comes and says, hey, we have wireless. Please throw out everything and now use my system. So that's not a great adoption strategy, right? What they did instead was investing in products that let actual music enthusiasts use their standalone feature, which is connecting things throughout your flat. So they had this Connect Amp thing that lets connect this existing wired speaker with an audio system from Sonos, but they also did it the other way around. So like if you, Tom, still had your old stereo and you wanted to upgrade your speakers, you could upgrade it with Sonos, but you could still use your old stereo to basically do the music input and then send it through the Sonos port to the Sonos audio systems.
That's interesting, isn't it? You know, kind of going after that market. I wonder if it was by association, by people in that space who had spent thousands and thousands of pounds on audio, embracing a brand like Sonos to get that feature. By association, it's then considered like a premium audiophile thing. I don't know because it was a while ago that was happening, but yeah, really interesting. If that was a kind of strategic play.
Yeah, very much so. And here we can see an example of a newcomer and the advantage it has over someone that's already in the space. I don't know, Bose, Bang & Olufsen, and other companies, which were actually designing these, high-end speakers.
Yep.
And they were not interested in like also working well with other speakers. They were mostly focused on like, we just want to make the best speaker, full stop. And there's a newcomer who says, I actually don't care. I just want to be successful. So I will work well. I will be compatible with all the speakers out there. And then at a certain stage that makes sense, which is the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you said, it's not the most powerful and also definitely not the most sold product anymore, but it was one of the products that made Sonos successful in the early days, right? Just getting into households, and then being able to level up from there. Next one, the mass adoption move. Actually, this was Alen mentioning it.
What comes to mind is a couple of things. One is Wi-Fi becoming more widespread, and second is phones becoming more widespread.
And what's on phones?
Streaming devices, streaming services.
Yep.
Yeah. Just one thing I want to say about this is like, if we put ourselves back into 2002, Wi-Fi was not what is today. You had to be really forward-looking to see like, we will create a, as you said, Franz, multi-room audio system that is wireless. It wasn't an obvious thing because Wi-Fi was not there. Then phones were not there. Like again, iPhone came out in 2007, so it was 5 years before that. So it was really a forward-thinking bunch that thought about Sonos.
Yeah, because how could you imagine easily setting up a wireless system like that without an app? I guess you would have had to do it on desktop or something. I don't know. I can't even imagine now a world where I'd be setting up connected devices without a really neat app, right? It's wild. They were thinking that far.
So dropping in one more fun fact. Sonos was actually founded to be a wireless technology. So they actually wanted to have a new wireless technology before they pivoted to wireless audio.
Interesting.
I didn't want to bring it up, but now that you said wireless wasn't really where it is right now, that's totally on point, right? Because first they thought we need to first create a new wireless technology before they realized to before they decided to actually go into wireless audio.
So on this topic, there is a story that one of the founders shared that in one of the early pitches when they were trying to raise money, one of the investors, the way investors sometimes test this product is like, let me just use it. So the investor basically took the device, which was meant to control the Sonos, and he went out to the parking lot, which was 30 meters away from the conference room, and he was still able to play with the Sonos, and that's when they decided to invest.
Yeah, that magic moment with the product, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Nice one. Bringing us back to strategic activities and strategy. Yeah,
Yes.
Mass adoption move was the next one. Sonos was actually the first company to integrate music streaming services into their own app. So having Spotify, Apple Music, then later Amazon Music within your app, so that you basically don't have to switch between apps, but you can browse, search, play music from one app. And that was actually one of the decisive moves also to make this Sonos ecosystem so strong that you wouldn't have to leave it, right? So you have not only a Sonos speaker, but you also have a Sonos app, and this Sonos app helps you from setup to everything while using. And at this point in time, it was also a very strong partner for these music streaming platforms, right? As you said, Alen, when you have a Sonos, but you're not having a music streaming, then you might want to think about it. So also these companies were very happy to partner with them. And that was a big move to reach the bigger adoption.
Do you see the emerging pattern? First multi-room audio system, first wireless, first, how should we call that? Streaming service integration. So there have been a lot of firsts in the story of Sonos, and maybe you'll touch upon even more, Franz, but that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's true. And it's actually the last first, because the next or the last thing that I have is not really something that is a complete distinguishing factor, but just something that is very well executed by Sonos, which is this modularity of their product line. So exactly what you said, Tom, adopting something that you usually only have for software businesses and not so much for hardware businesses, also in a hardware business. You want to win over one customer, but then it's not over for you. Like you sell a car and then it's done, but you actually have the opportunity to upsell and cross-sell and increase the lifetime value of your users, and not just wait until your speaker is broken and they might buy the next one also from you or maybe from somebody else, but really having this system of a very, now not super cheap, but at least cheaper gateway speakers that you can just try out and maybe win over loyal customers. A really great value proposition in terms of one speaker works great, but two speakers work more than double as good than that. So you might want to start already with two. And just this opportunity of just upgrading with every single paycheck or whatever you get, adding a subwoofer, adding a soundbar to your TV, just this very seamless way of integrating additional pieces to your system, adding it to your bathroom or to another room. So that's just not something that Sonos does as the standalone, also not something that Sonos did as a first company, but this ecosystem that they have created and this ease of setup that they have created just makes it, and I would still say, a factor that makes Sonos so successful.
Yeah,
Presumably.
completely.
Let's see if it's actually successful.
Well, I guess we will see, won't we?
But we do definitely see it in this number that you asked in the quiz, right? An average of 3 Sonos products per household, 17%, and I only have like 2018 numbers, I think. 17% of users have 5 or more.
That's wild.
So that's big.
Yep.
It's
huge.
And, I think the interesting thing, the distinction here, you could think, you said about getting a paycheck, upgrading, getting a new bit of hardware. I think the important slight difference between other bits of technology, if you think about like iPhone upgrading every year, and there are people who want to upgrade all the time because of the new features. I don't think that is so much a thing with Sonos. Like the products lines stay pretty consistent. The names stay the same. Most of the new features can't you get through app upgrades and stuff. It's not this kind of business model where it's forcing you to upgrade constantly. Like I'm not going to change my Beam every couple of years, but I might augment it, and I might keep those for a while and I'll keep building out. And then in 7 years' time, I might replace the soundbar. And then 4 years later, I might replace the secondary speakers. But there isn't this kind of waste or like constant pressure to upgrade the existing hardware, which I think is interesting and very different to a lot of other technology purchases. I can see myself adding, you mentioned Franz, they got like the Roam, which is like $130-$40 maybe, which is a great kind of gateway product. I could have one of those for the garden. And I was moved from the garden through to the front room where I've got the Beam and stuff like that. Very clever.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's what I have for distinguishing factors and strategic moves that set Sonos apart from the competition, which leads me to the next point that I have, which is competition. Are you ready again for a guessing game?
We love guessing games.
Yeah.
Especially if it involves some numbers. But even if it doesn't, it's fine.
No, it doesn't involve numbers, but it involves companies. So I say
Cool.
the name of the group that I gave it, and then you give company names, right?
That's that.
Okay. Competitors of Sonos. The traditionals.
Traditionals.
I mean, two things come to mind, but does this traditionals have an adjective or is it just traditionals?
Traditional.
Okay. I'm going to guess this is other companies that traditionally only do audio. Bose,
Exactly.
Bang & Olufsen, and so on.
That's exactly it. Yeah. That's one strong competition because they are competing with the quality of sound, right? So we have learned now that Sonos has different levels of value propositions, right? And one of these is great audio, first class audio. And this is definitely Bose and Bang & Olufsen that they compete with here. The next one is the we do everything to entertain you group.
Oh yeah, Google, Apple, Samsung, Sony.
Getting closer.
Okay, Samsung, Sony.
Yeah. Samsung, Sony, LG.
Yeah. So basically electronics companies that do TVs, what else? Well, everything that's in your living room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's true. So what are they competing on? Definitely value, right? So they have a huge product range. They are maybe more affordable. They're maybe not as strong in the when it comes to perception. Obviously, they do have premium products, but they're more of a mass, let's say, mass focused approach.
Yeah, they just do more product categories.
Exactly.
Recognizable, safe brands as well,
Yeah,
right? If you're
that's
not
true.
you don't want to risk it, you're spending in that middle area, then yeah.
Cool. The youngest group, the smart speakers.
Google.
Google, Apple, I guess Amazon might be in the mix
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Amazon has 55% market share of smart speakers. Smart speakers means you can control your speaker with voice controls, and you can enter different parts of the internet, maybe also different accounts. So this is definition of smart speaker, and Amazon crushed this market. They're actually going down a little bit. So they used to have over 70%, but now they're at like 50-55% in the smart speaker market, right? I'm not talking about the home entertainment, home audio, only smart speaker. And that's actually a squeeze for Sonos, right? So before they were competing with more traditional brands, so they had innovation upside. Then they were, so now traditional Bang & Olufsen and Bose. So here they had a little bit of this geek upside, innovation upside, wireless upside. Then the next one was we do everything to entertain you. Obviously, there is a differentiation factor here because you are the sound company and the wireless sound company, and you're not TV and sound company. But then now with smart speakers, Amazon, Apple, Google entering the space, squeezing from the other side for Sonos. And Sonos doesn't do really good in this market of smart speakers. Maybe Alen, you'll talk a little bit more about that.
No, you can go deeper into that.
4-ish%.
4%.
Yeah, like 3, 3.7, 4.4, something about like depending on the year you look at.
Yeah, that's not great. Especially because you know that these companies like Amazon, Google, Apple are some of the best companies in the world when it comes to profitability. So if they really wanted to get you out of the market, they could get you completely out of the market.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not doing that well financially, just because they have less pressure to make this super profitable.
Yeah, because they rely on, like, I guess Google and Amazon's technology being embedded, right? And they could pull the rug anytime from Sonos.
Which is a great segue for the not so obvious group of competitor. We mentioned them already as the biggest partners.
Streaming service providers?
Exactly.
You mean like, are they already competitors or potential competitors?
I would say they are still big partners, but they are potential competitors now. Because at the moment, Sonos integrates Spotify, Apple Music, Google Music, YouTube, and so on into their app, and users can control these services through the Sonos app. And the same is true for the voice control of Alexa and the Google Assistant. But yeah, that looks like a nice partnership on the first side until business interests of the streaming platform providers change, right? So maybe what you want to do is increase the usage of your app as Spotify, because you need people to have a look at visual ads, because you need to monetize your business better. Are you still gonna let Sonos run everything in their app? Let's see.
Interesting.
And
Right.
next one is, what if exclusivity is now a factor? What if you as Amazon want to win this game? Maybe you're now only letting Amazon products run on Amazon hardware, like Apple is doing forever with the iOS, right? This is a strategy that's not the first one in this space. So it's not like these platforms aren't always open. It's not always the case that you have a hardware and it integrates with every streaming platform provider. There is a very strong example where Apple just doesn't allow anybody else to integrate with their product, and they only have these proprietary versions. So if that changes, Sonos uses a huge upside in their value proposition, right? So this ease of use and this whole app experience of Sonos doesn't get as smooth or isn't as smooth anymore.
Yeah, that's a huge threat. The way to think about it is also through analogy. Like this story reminds me a little bit of the Netflix story. So Netflix in the beginning was a cool up and coming startup, but then when it started crushing everything, and when other companies have seen the results, oh, Netflix is super profitable, it's growing like crazy. Why would we license our content to them? So then the HBO, Disney, and others were like, maybe we should do our own, first of all, our own streaming service. Well, not streaming service. How is this called? Is it also streaming service? These Netflix type of... It is, right? Yeah. Video streaming, exactly. So let's also do our own. And then what they did was basically say, hey, our most important movies are just going to be exclusive on our platform. We will still license a few things to Netflix, but not everything. So one scenario for Sonos is also maybe Spotify and Apple Music and Amazon Music won't all of a sudden say, hey, we want to go off your platform. But they may say, actually, Sonos, you can't play podcasts through Spotify because we have signed the contract with Joe Rogan and we want to make sure we can monetize this better and blah, 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 blah.
Exclusive
so
content.
It could be a hybrid, you know? So it's not like binary. So these streaming services go completely off. First step may be we will just take certain content off of your experience. And that's a slippery slope. Once you get there, you should be really concerned as a brand.
Yeah, I have to say, it was one of the reasons I went for Sonos over any of the other options was, it on the surface looks like it's open, right? Like it has the most streaming services. I didn't want to be locked into... The Apple product looked really interesting, but so many problems with... I'm a Spotify user, have been for years, so I didn't want something that was restricted there. But yeah, if that suddenly changed, that I would have an issue there. But also interesting to your previous point, which is around Spotify could develop their own hardware, right? Like really tightly integrated. At the moment, Sonos is still a middle partner in there. You'd imagine. I mean, Spotify have done this, right? They built the car thing, which they don't make anymore, but they've had little foray into hardware. And if something was really tightly integrated, interesting.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you later why probably they won't do it.
Thanks for this spoiler. I was also thinking about, should I bring this up now? That maybe not. But it's a nice segue to your part, Alen, right? Talking about financials.
Hold that thought, because it's little segue first before we get into the numbers. Little brain cleanser before we get into the numbers is a bit of a Sonos quiz, official quiz. We've asked a few questions as we go. We've got a few bits. One of them we've already answered, so we'll skip over that one, and then we will get into Alan's numbers. So, question one, and I'm going to alternate between who I asked for an answer here. These are all multiple choice. Question one: what controversial decision in 2019 led to significant customer backlash against Sonos, prompting the company to quickly revise its policy? Was it A, increasing the prices of its flagship products, B, announcing the discontinuation of support for some older models, C, initiating a recycle mode that would effectively brick older devices, or D, restricting the use of third-party music streaming services on Sonos speakers? A, B, C, or D?
Please ask Franz.
Any thoughts?
I can't believe they would have done D. I think what was the restricting or discontinuing support for older models?
So the C was initiating a recycle mode that would effectively brick, which means kind of like make them useless. Older devices traded in for a discount on new purchases. Or B, announcing discontinuation of support for some older speaker models.
I take B.
Yeah, me too.
That's a classic.
That actually came a couple of years later. In 2019, it was C. It was this recycle mode. So basically, if you wanted to get a discount on a new bit of hardware, they gave a really high discount. I think it was like 30 or 40% if you would kind of give up your old hardware. So basically, you'd go, yeah, I'm willing to sacrifice this hardware. No one can use it. I'm going to brick it. In exchange for a discount on that new purchase. And it got a massive backlash, loads of criticism. Because, after like 21 days, it would disable all the device's functionality. Many people saw it as like really wasteful, particularly given the quality of the products, right? They have a lot of longevity. So just going, basically, this is absolutely useless now. They ended up not following through with that strategy.
It's an interesting example of business versus design rationale, because from business side, they obviously wanted to do it to not need to invest in supporting their old hardware anymore, also making more people buy the new one. And from the design side, they have built a really durable product and now they're paying for it on the business side. So it's one of those like conundrums.
Yeah, it's a real catch-22, isn't it? They've got such longevity, and
so
now
you need to build a really good product, but not too good.
and now you can get like a really decent. If you've already got a product, you get a really decent discount on follow-up products. So more sustainable. So question 2: which company did Sonos start partnering with to create furniture with built-in speakers in the early 2020s? Was it A, IKEA, B, Herman Miller?
It's A.
It was A. It was so hard to think of other furniture companies that might be legitimate partners, but under the Symfonisk brand. Sorry, Swedish people who listen to this, I've just butchered your language. A table lamp speaker and a bookshelf speaker, and I have the bookshelf speaker in my kitchen. It's really interesting price point. So it's like half the price, I guess, of a standard Sonos unit. The design is not quite as slick. The sound is not quite as good, but it connects. And in a kitchen, it's perfect. Like I don't need incredible audio in that scenario. So for me, I was like willing to take the hit on those two factors, but it's part of the ecosystem still.
That's an interesting also business view to when we partner, how do we make sure that this is not cannibalizing our main product? And another analogy would be, when you go into a store and then this store has its own, I think it's called trade brand. So like, I don't know, you go into Walmart and there's a Walmart milk. There's the same company that's selling their own milk. They're also selling the Walmart milk. So you need to find ways for the partnering product to still feel different. So I think someone else in this way just went with lower quality, it sounds like, which is the same thing that food brands do, or maybe different packaging or less premium packaging and so on. So there's different ways to do it. But from the business side, there is this urge to grow, and that's why the companies do it.
Yeah, and it's an interesting way of getting that product into people's homes with a better price point. To Franz's point earlier around the kind of all different modalities that they have with the product, you can totally imagine that might be the gateway for some people. For me, it was a cheaper way of getting other rooms on outside of where I do most of my listening, sort of into the ecosystem. Really interesting partnership. Which company, next question, did Sonos sue in 2020 alleging patent infringements? Was it A, Amazon, B, Google, C, Apple, or D, Bose? I'm going to let Alen go first this time.
Yeah, I think it's B, and it just came out this week that they won, I think.
Correct, yeah. Filed that lawsuit alleging they'd infringed on 5 of their patents. It was settled last week. Sonos was awarded $32.5 million in damages, which worked out to the equivalent of $2.30 for each of the 14 million devices they'd sold that they thought infringed on that patent.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fair.
Does it? I mean, Google have argued these were like minor underused features of the product. I think they are still going to challenge the ruling. But yeah,
the number looks low though.
it does look low, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Probably cost them far more than that in legal fees. Final question, because one of the questions we already answered. In 2019, Sonos acquired a French company called Snips. What technology did Snips specialize in? Was it A, Wi-Fi technology, B, voice assist AI, C, speaker hardware, or D, Bluetooth technology?
B.
Correct. So yeah, specializing in on-device voice assistants. So the interesting bit with that acquisition is a lot of this voice assistant technology is all about the sort of machine learning aspect to it. It's all going into the cloud and whatnot. And I like the sound of this because I turn off voice assistants generally, not a fan. But this one, none of the voice data is sent up to the cloud, so it's a big privacy play as well. It all remains on your local network, so you get a lot of the convenience without the perceived privacy issues, which is another reason I didn't go for like a Google or an Apple or a Amazon device.
Interesting.
I
move,
did
Sonos.
actually.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know what? Sorry.
I didn't know the technology difference and that Sonos actually went into this direction. I do think it's smart.
Yeah. Like this is the only reason I returned my Echo Dot, Amazon Echo Dot. So I bought it, played with it, and then started reading about the privacy and how they're dealing with just storing and downloading and managing your audio, and just like, nope, don't wanna risk that.
Signing off out. Yeah, I got a free, ironically, through Spotify. They were giving away free Google, whatever the little speakers are called. And I was like, I'll take a free one of those, have a play with it. And yeah, same thing. The quality wasn't great. And I was giving up so much potential privacy for this little free speaker. I was like, no, not in my home.
Yeah.
So it could be a really interesting positioning piece for them, right? Of like, if you care about privacy and you want this convenience, this great technology, we're the people to help you with that. They don't seem to be pushing hard on that right now, but I can imagine that being a really interesting play for them.
Yeah, I think in general, like the recurring theme with a lot of these decisions they make is really like, how can we be different from others? And that's generally a really interesting strategy. Just not like what can we copy from others that's working, but like what do others do that doesn't seem to make sense from the user perspective and business perspective. And that's another one of those moves.
Definitely.
So
yeah, good quizzing.
Yes,
you all got some of the answers to those. So little cleanser before we get deep into the numbers.
Numbers.
Yes, Alen, over to you.
So let's see if you will do as well with the numbers, because you know what time it is. It's time for the guesstimates. Who is larger? So as last time, we will play I will compare Sonos to 3 companies. And you'll tell me if, in terms of the revenue, which is bigger, Sonos or that other company? Ready to play the game?
Ready.
Yep.
Okay, so who is bigger, Sonos or Ferrari?
Sonos.
I was going to say Sonos.
Okay, no, actually Ferrari.
Really?
Ferrari has $5 billion in yearly revenue as of 2022.
Okay.
I'm not going to reveal the number of Sonos yet, so just for you to know. Okay, so Ferrari is.
So we're getting on revenue.
Bigger.
Revenue's our metric that we're.
Yeah. It's revenue.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So second one, Sonos or GoPro? That's a good one, right?
That's really
I knew
good.
this is going to be a hard one.
That's good. I'm going to go GoPro just to, yeah.
I go Sonos.
Okay, it is Sonos. It's quite a bit bigger, yeah, quite much bigger. So GoPro is 700 million in revenue, in yearly revenue. Used to be even more, but one of the common themes I have found in this financial research is for a lot of these electronics, there has been a downturn, GoPro and Sonos included. So what about Oculus VR? So is Sonos or Oculus VR a company with probably one of the biggest investments ever? Which one has more revenue?
Who goes first?
As you wish.
I'm happy to go Sonos. I'm going to go Sonos on this one.
Okay.
I also think it's Sonos.
Yeah, unfortunately, no, it's Oculus VR, but it's
Really?
just slightly. Yes.
Wow.
So Oculus VR has 2.1 billion in yearly revenue in 2022. All of these numbers are US dollars. And Sonos has 1.7 billion
Wow.
in yearly revenue. A little bit.
So for Ferrari, couldn't have found it out. I just thought, okay, market is smaller for luxury cars, but maybe the size of one purchase is the one that that then brings it to a higher revenue number. For GoPro, it was for me kind of straightforward because market for filming, action filming, might be smaller than the market for I have a flat and want music. But for Oculus Rift, I thought this must be smaller because they are similar in price, right? Oculus Rift is not super expensive. And then I imagined VR, AR technology to have a smaller market than speakers.
It could also be the fact that Facebook has just, pushed this to the as far as you can push a technology that's not ready yet. Sorry for saying this, but if you disagree,
Still
we
makes
can
you
talk
dizzy.
on Twitter. Yeah, so I think that's the only reason this is higher than Sonos.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Sonos is 1.7 billion in revenue, US dollars, which is 4 times as smaller than Lululemon, which we had last time, and something I would have never guessed if you asked
Same
me.
here.
So if you wake me up at 3 a.m. in the morning and ask me, is Sonos bigger than Lululemon? I'm like, yeah, for sure, man. But no.
The difference is even bigger in market cap, right? Have you also compared the market cap?
Yes.
So
let's
I was
talk
like,
about the
okay,
market cap.
revenue is weirdly different. But when you look at market cap, it's like blowing your head, blowing your mind.
Yeah. You want to share the numbers, Franz? Because I only looked up a few, but it sounds like you did more.
So market cap for Lululemon. So just comparing again, revenue for Lululemon 8 billion and revenue for Bose 1.7 billion.
Bose or Sonos?
Sorry, Sonos.
Yeah.
Then market cap for Lululemon 43 billion and market cap for Sonos 1.8.
Yeah. So it's basically 1 to 1.
43.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Are
But
we ever
even
going to be as surprised by companies' numbers than Lululemon? I think we picked a real interesting outlier there as far as it just took us all by surprise, right?
Yeah.
That'll be our forever question is, but are they, how do they compare to Lululemon?
We can call it the Lululemon Index.
Yeah.
Instead of the Big Mac.
How surprised are you?
No, but I'm as surprised about Sonos's market cap as I was about Lululemon's revenue.
Yeah.
Because you don't see you don't see often technology companies having revenue to market cap 1 to 1. Usually it's just a multiple, like, I don't know, 5, 10x. And this is just, 1 to 1 basically. But reason it's 1 to 1, it's also because of their profitability. But I'll get to this in a bit. First, just to compare Sonos with other competitors in terms of the revenue. So Bose is actually, in terms of these, I think you call them traditional players, Franz. It is the biggest player in the traditional sense, even though it's a private company. And when a company is private, it means it doesn't disclose all of their financial data. So it's not as easy to find how much revenue they're making. But the latest data, based on some triangulating other stuff, is 3 billion in revenue for Bose. And what do you think Bang & Olufsen does? Less or more in revenue compared to Sonos?
Less, I reckon.
Much less. I was quite surprised. Only 400 million in revenue. Yeah, that's a big delta, big difference here. I was expecting these to be on par. But the interesting thing is, if you look into their financials, all of them have seen a decline. Not in 2020 when the COVID hit, but now, like from 2021 to 2022. Maybe people spend less time in their homes, so that has an effect. Maybe it's also people buying more headphones, not speakers, and so on. So another thing that you always want to have a look at with hardware companies is something called the gross margin. So basically, the two typical margins you have a look at is gross margin and the net margin. Just a quick side lesson. So gross margin, very simply speaking, is how profitable your product or service is. And then the net profit margin is how profitable your company is. So it means when you sell a product and you deduct all the costs associated directly with making and selling the product is the gross margin. And then when you add all the other things, which is marketing, it's factory, like floor and all the things, like let's call it admin costs, then you get the net margin. So yeah, gross margin is pretty healthy in this space. It's very healthy actually. It's around 40 to 45%, which is pretty good compared to other hardware products where it can be even 30 or 20%. But unfortunately, the net margin or data I was able to find and compare something called EBITDA margin. And maybe let's not go into today what EBITDA margin is, but happy to do so if you want me to do so, Tom. But let's just equate net margin, EBITDA margin for a moment. And Sonos and Bang & Olufsen both, because they're public companies, I could find it for them. It was 10% last year, and it's roughly 1% this year. So last year being 2021 and this year being 2022. So a huge decline. And you remember when I said why maybe Spotify, why maybe Amazon and Google won't go into this space? Maybe it's because of that. So something seems to be off with these numbers. Yeah, that's not the best result. And that's why maybe even the market cap is as low for Sonos as it is. On the same topic, maybe why I'm comparing Sonos to Bang & Olufsen and Bose and not to Samsung, Sony and others is because I want to compare apples to apples. And it's hard to take a company like Samsung and understand what percentage of their revenue comes just from speakers.
Yeah.
Because when you go and look at these big public companies like Samsung, Sony, LG, you get a big fat number like, oh, we make 100 billion in a year. And then you don't know what percentage actually comes from speakers. There is a way to navigate that. For example, I could find for Sony a good estimate that this number is actually around 3 to 4 billion. Because there is in their annual report, there is a line that says electronic division and it generates 78 billion revenue. And then it basically says that 27 billion come from televisions, 21 from gaming, 30 from other. And then this suggests that audio is likely in the range of 3 to 4 billion. So this is maybe also a little bit of how to do the business research with numbers. Yeah, fun fact. AirPods. You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
AirPods are just such a money-making machine. This is unbelievable. Do you know how much revenue AirPods in themselves, by themselves make compared to all the other companies? So AirPods, again, you can't find the exact numbers, but using some proxy numbers and triangulating, you can see that only AirPods for Apple make roughly between 10 and 15 billion per year, which means AirPods in itself make more revenue than Spotify does as a company.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
And Sonos together.
And Sonos together.
I guess they're part of the missing link between, your streaming and convenience and whatnot. They're just ubiquitous, aren't they? Really are.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I mean, we'll probably talk about this in the next segment, but this is one of the biggest opportunities, I think, for Sonos. Like, hey, headphones.
Yeah, not done anything there yet. Not that I'm aware of. Don't know if you've seen it.
No, there are rumors. There have been rumors since 2021, but like,
I guess does it neatly fit into that whole ecosystem thing? It would be a very different product offering, wouldn't it? Yeah. I don't think of, well, I know that we say that the audio quality is very, very good, and like that is where they're positioning themselves, but it's not hi-fi quality. It's worth pointing that out. Like if you get the nerds on YouTube doing a comparison between like a Sonos setup, like an art like for $1,000, you compare that to like putting together, you know, a load of separates and doing it all in that way.
Yeah,
there's a difference, and I'm not sure. Would people associate Sonos with that like really, really high quality audio rather than just the convenience? There would have to be a real convenience aspect, I think, to the headphones to make them stand out against the other headphone offerings. Maybe. I can't quite see where it would sit.
Yeah. That's why they probably didn't do it yet, because it doesn't fit that nicely into the strategy. But what I know as a numbers guy is when you see these numbers, you probably, especially as a public company, you just can't help yourself. Like you need to try it.
There's an opportunity, right? Even if we take the like 5% of that market, it's enormous slice of the pie. If we can if people are really bought into the brand and the ecosystem, which they clearly are, when we look at those repurchasing figures, then yeah. Maybe true. Maybe there is something there.
Yeah.
This is one of it's one of the most important questions that businesses face. It's like when you're not doing as great. So Sonos is doing pretty good, but it's not like an amazing story that investors would dream of investing their money in. And yeah, in these cases, then you look for inspiration, like what are other players in the space doing? And that's when you start copying too much. So that's the fear I have for Sonos, and frankly for any other company. Just like, oh, let's just jump into headphones because this is not super profitable, blah, blah, blah. But a really important question is, what is the Sonos way of doing headphones? You know, what is the advantage we have over others? It gives me hope that they are usually taking really good decisions. It gives me hope that they could, have a good product design there. But at the moment, I'm not buying their stock.
Also, one other thing. How much is the net margin again? Do we have also total numbers? Like what is the profit?
EBITDA margin. I mean, I can quickly look it up. Sonos 2022. Investor numbers. So 1.7 billion in revenue and adjusted EBITDA. No, never look at adjusted EBITDA. Give me a normal EBITDA, please. I can't find it in the moment, Franz.
It's all right. Because
I think
I wanted to bring up one thing and discuss one thing, because you said it's not really an investment case. Sonos did secure 400 and something million in
445 million in total.
Yeah, so 445 million in total.
Yeah.
They did an IPO at 1.9 billion, right?
That's a good question.
That's what X?
That's a 4x. But I mean, one thing that you have to keep in mind is certain investors that invested very early did well.
Yeah.
But then the later you invest in the company, the higher the valuation, the lower the multiple for you as investors.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we just look at total number of investments, which is 450 million, and then you divide that with 2 billion, yeah, not a crazy return, not bad either, but most of the VC companies look for those 10x.
That's what I was trying to say, right? So it is an okay case. It was an okay case for first investors. Also going public with 1.9 billion is actually a success, considering that we have now 1.8 of market cap. So actually the IPO was in 2017, 18.
Yeah.
So they went public with 1.95 billion. Now they have 1.8. So yeah, I think they started out pretty great, but ever since, or especially since after Corona wore off, they're really not doing great.
And that's the funny thing, because Tom, in the beginning, I think after the first 20 minutes, we got a feeling that, Sonos is the best thing ever and we love their products. They have a good competitive advantage. And then you dig into these numbers and you get worried.
Well, it's always an interesting sort of existential question for designers. Is like, we always say, design it and they will come. Like, if you've got the best products, it's going to be a great business. But yeah, not necessarily always the case. I think we can't deny it's a good business at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not, from an investment perspective, you're talking about, it's not going to 10x anytime soon. You're not buying, but it's a good business. But if you were just in the profit and the numbers game, which obviously they are as a company, they're going to want to. They've probably might have some sustained profitability, but that big leaps might be more difficult in that premium category.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and that's just the downside of being public. You always have this expectation of we want more.
Yeah, and then the worry comes, right? We talked about this with Lululemon last time. You talked about having to diversify. Like, that could be a strategy of like, okay, we go after play somewhere that we haven't before, where there's opportunity to take a piece of the pie, but then we dilute the offering, or we take innovation resources away from what we do really well right now. So always got to be mindful of that. Might bring some short-term gains, go into the headphone business, but if people stop seeing you as the strongest speaker player, if you stop innovating there and investing there, that's a challenge longer term. This is the eternal problem with being having pressure from shareholders, should I say?
Yeah, in this case, it's shareholders. Yeah.
Both will give you pressure.
Should we look into the future?
Yes.
What do you think?
Let's get the crystal ball out. Yeah.
Threats and opportunities.
Yeah. Do you want to go first, Franz?
I mean, threats, again, I think we discussed most of them. I think one very big threat is smart speakers and their inability to capture a good share of this market. So that's not really new. The next one is also this streaming services shift. So this, let's say, pressure for all the streaming services to maybe change something in their monetization strategy, change something in their approach to doing business, which could lead to kicking out or not licensing their services to Sonos anymore, or maybe having exclusive content. So I think that's a huge one. I think one big problem is that it seems that Sonos does not own the most important step in the value chain. So when you think about this whole consuming music, the most important thing is the music. So you're still dependent on somebody integrating. So as the business model of or the product of Sonos works, they're still dependent on being integrated with all music streaming services. So if they don't own that, they always are in trouble if that changes. And it smells a little bit like that. And the second one that gets even stronger now and seems to be the new most important step in the value chain is the smart capabilities of voice control. And here is where they invested, but still they are a tiny share of the market of the smart speaker. So I think here it's more a catch-up game rather than a Sonos being the front runner, which they're used to be in this speaker world.
And so we should stay on threats. I don't know if you want any more threats. We'll come back to opportunities, or is that all of your sort of threats, Franz?
Last threat, generally hardware business. It's hard to be a hardware business. So that's why the name. So
definitely.
Every year you're starting with 0. You don't have like a base of subscription. You do have a nice base of users that can add things to their ecosystem. So with Sonos, they have already kind of mitigated this a little bit, but still hardware is hard. If you're not selling every year consistently like 4 million, 5 million units, Yeah, but where are they gonna go if they work for 7 years, right? So it's really hard to keep this up year after year, and the pressure comes from, as we said, not only cheap knockoffs but also Amazon, Google, and Apple. Yeah.
Definitely. Alen, threats from your perspective?
In addition to what Franz has said,
if you have any, Franz had some great ones in there. So if you've got any additional ones.
I mean, the quick thing, for example, like we could talk about the supply chain potentially disrupting because of everything that has happened during the COVID pandemic. I don't know exactly where their suppliers are, but if this is not domestic or if it's not, diversified enough, then you could have issues there. Another one is just general economic downturn, which we are facing at the moment. And when that happens, electronics is one thing that it's a luxury in a way. And it's one thing we can easily cut out, especially if you're not like into music and into high-end music. You can just, instead of buying an expensive high-end speaker, you can just use your computer speaker or something else. So yeah, these are two additional things that I had on the list that Franz didn't mention.
Yeah,
but they're both short-term, I think.
Yeah, I think I don't know if this is so much a threat, but a lack of opportunity moving forward is, I think they had a big kind of sales, like big growth spurt with COVID, right? Working from home, wanting decent music around you. The sort of growth in staying at home, Netflix, people wanted to make that experience way, way better than it is through their crappy speakers on their TV. It's, how much has the premium market been saturated? How many people are already now owners? And the temptation might be to try and go for a less premium market. That might be an opportunity. I won't go into that right now. But yeah, how much have they already captured most of their potential market that came in because of explosion in streaming, being at home all the time? Like, they're not going to have years like 2020, 2021, 2022. Potentially not, without something else coming along that makes people desire those products quickly to make their lives more fun during those tough times. So opportunities. Alen, do you want to go first this time? What could make the future more rosy for Sonos in the tough business of hardware?
Headphones. That's one. I mean, we talked about it. Another one is maybe getting acquired by, if either having a partnership or getting acquired by one of those big tech players, I think could be their move. So sort of a merger acquisition. These are the two big opportunities. Maybe new markets. So if they have a different type of product or a cheaper product, maybe they can go to new geographies, direct to consumer. So that's could be in terms of the growth. Yeah.
Okay.
So product innovation, financial innovation in terms of getting acquired or or partnering up, and then sales innovation. So just finding new channels and finding new locations to go after.
I did see.
So as you can see, no great ideas.
No great ideas. So hopefully their team are on it. I did see that during COVID, the direct consumer numbers for them doubled in that first year of COVID, like from like 11% to like 24%, something like that, which is an enormous drop. That's multi-year growth in DTC, because obviously they weren't able to sell in that traditional environment. And it is interesting, isn't it, that so many people are willing to part with their cash for an audio product, a premium audio product, without necessarily hearing it. I bought it on trust, watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and just the experience sold me of like, this is not going to be a pain to set up. I think that says a lot, that people are willing to shell out for a premium audio product and maybe not even hear it in a store. So that's really interesting. Franz,
Yeah.
any other opportunities on your side?
Honestly, not at all. So
No.
I was close to definitely the headphones. I can't stop thinking about what they do with their partnerships and integrations, which was what made them really strong. But there is no real differentiation, right? Because you can't stream something else than music. You have already integrated all your streaming providers. So I think that's more like, I don't really know what to do, what I would do in their place with this ecosystem of streaming providers. But I believe that this is, so that's my projection. This is going to be either a move or a problem for them.
Interesting. We're not seeing, the product innovation opportunities I feel quite minimal beyond it, quite marginal changes in products. They've recently gone into like the Dolby Atmos area, trying to build speakers that can do spatial audio, but they're very, very expensive. They're one of the first to market on that. So there is opportunity there. And you can't have that, you can't send Atmos to existing speakers, right? So there is an incentive for some people, if that technology really becomes something people want in the homes, there could be this whole boom of replacement of the hardware. So that could be something.
That's an interesting one.
I wondered whether there's anything they do, and I couldn't personally advocate for this because I think it is potentially wasteful, but something in the financing of hardware for consumers, of encouraging more regular updates or upgrades through a sort of rental system. So, you have these devices on a subscription, and then in 5 years we'll upgrade all of your hardware, and they have that kind of recurring revenue. So like a business model innovation, which could lead to more adoption, also to marketing, like, oh, this is a cool new story. I would argue this could even be better for the environment, because then you as a company you're basically incentivized to create a product that can be refurbished. So you will put different materials in there that are easier to be reused, because you are the owner. When you basically let someone subscribe to your product, then you will think much harder about how to make this more robust. So that's an interesting one, and could definitely change the playing field. From the business perspective, it's definitely interesting. Not so sure about from the user perspective. Like, do people want to subscribe, to have another subscription? And probably Spotify is in a better space to do that. Like, hey, if you just add a little bit more here, you also get a speaker with your Spotify subscription. So it's easier to already build on a subscription than to introduce it. But it's an interesting thought for sure. Yeah. Do we think they could move into the content space? Like, I know they have their own radio offering now, like ad-free, kind of paid option, and they're really talking about how great how great their AI modeling is as far as recommendation engines. But I guess that would then go against their ethos of being an open platform, of streaming from anywhere, if they started to really push their own content model. But that could be another thing they consider, maybe.
Yeah.
Interesting. Watch this space, I guess. I'm curious to see if these headphones show up in the next few months, and we can recap. Yes.
Maybe we should hold on to this episode until they release headphones.
So I guess final question is whether we called it buying or selling. This isn't financial advice, all that kind of stuff. We're bullish or bearish on Sonos moving forward in the next couple of years. Franz, how are you feeling about them after our?
I'd sell. Definitely not buy.
Okay. Why in particular? We've probably covered most of it, but
I think obviously with every company, the earlier you invest, the better it is. But I think especially with hardware, that's where you need to be early in the game. And now I think the lemon is squeezed. It feels like it. I feel like that's the case for Sonos. Might be like a healthy business in future. Maybe they're focusing more on being profitable from now on, but I think there won't be much growth. It might be a good profitable business, but also again, it's hardware and electronics, which with a strong with a strong competition. So even if they have good unit margins, I say no.
No. Alan?
Also bearish at the moment. Yes, for all the reasons we mentioned. The story doesn't seem very positive at the moment. So definitely not on my buying list.
Yeah, I think I feel the same on reflection. Very often it's a brand we love. We want them to succeed, but it looks challenging. We're looking back at a company that started over 20 years ago. That's a really good run. And I'm sure they will be around for the foreseeable, but whether they have that kind of big innovation, big growth opportunities that we've seen so far. So yeah, with you. Maybe one day we'll come back to these and see what our predictions were.
We should have some kind of a list, the MBA index.
Indeed. Cool.
Maybe it would be fun because we wouldn't buy anything.
It's two on two so far of
That's
not
true.
feeling too bullish.
So let's right now think of what the next, not right now in this episode, but right now after closing this episode, talking about what we should tear apart next. Maybe we find a buy candidate.
It might be a newer business, I reckon, that if we're looking for more candidates.
Yeah, could also be old business that's super profitable. Think Coca-Cola, right? Super old, but still a stock that you might want to invest in. But yeah,
unless you don't like the company.
Yeah,
that's another story.
Yeah, that's another one completely. Cool. I think we're done.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Franz. For everyone who stayed with us until now, you are a perfect fit for Mini MBA. So if you enjoyed this type of content, what we do is we also have these free email course where if you sign up over the course of 7 days, you receive 7 emails, each of them teaching you a certain business concept that's relevant to the work of designers. So if you're interested in signing up, head over to d.mba/mini-mba. So that's d.mba/mini-mba. And that is indeed everything in this episode. Thanks, everyone, and see you soon with the next Teardown. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.